Jai Hind, Jai Bharat, and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Adi Achin. I'm once again here with Brig Arun Sahgal, who's going to try and help us to understand what is the Indian narrative in the backdrop of this whole global power balance that is emerging. A lot of things in this world have changed, are changing, and are going to change. How does India set in its narrative? What should it be? And where does Sir see India's narrative going in the future? Sir, firstly, hello and welcome. It's great to have you back on the show.
Thank you, Aadi. It's always a pleasure to be with you. A very interesting show that you put across, and you actually test my complete mettle in trying to answer the issues that you raise. So I'll do my best today as well. So let's get started.
So let's take an overall broad perspective to open this discussion. Indian narrative. I mean, this is something that we have not heard of before. It's not something which is discussed. Uh, what is and what should be the Indian narrative, and how would you place it with the change which is happening around us?
Okay. Can you show me the map, please?
Absolutely, sir.
Okay. The Indian narrative has to be contextualized in the emerging world order. And if you see the emerging world order as we see it on this screen, we are looking at the world from as to who are the main players. If you look at the West, uh, or what we call the Euro-Atlantic Power Concentration or Power Alliance, you see the West in United States, Canada, and in Europe. This is essentially the West, and then the West has its alliance partners in the Indo-Pacific in terms of Australia, Japan, and Philippines, Korea, etc. So this is by and large the entire concentration. When we talk about the West, we talk about two issues. One is the Euro-Atlantic Alliance plus its partners in the Pacific. And please note that Euro-Atlantic Alliance is essentially maritime-oriented alliance. They dominate the Atlantic sea lanes, and they are presence in the Eastern Asian sea lanes. When we look at the challenging this, particularly after the Ukraine war, with Russia as the predominant power usurper and a naughty player in the global system at this particular point in time, uh, uh, the second alliance that is coming up, particularly after the no limits partnership between China and Russia, is the Sino-Russian strategic alignment, which I call it. It's not yet a detente, it's not yet a full-fledged alliance system, but it's a strategic alignment, particularly in concert with what I call the Euro-Atlantic Alliance, and this is continental centric. As per Mahan's theory of whoever controls this part, the Central Eurasia and Asia will control the world. So this is Mackinder's oriented.
Heartland theory.
Sorry,
The Heartland theory, sir.
the Heartland theory. This is the Heartland theory. Between these two, the concentration of power and the new areas of contestation, apart from the continental Europe where the Ukraine war is going on, there is a new area of concentration of contest which is emerging, and that is called the Rimland. This is the Spikeman's theory of Rimland, and here the Rimland is emerging are the sea lines of communications which have become the central to the energy and trade resources. I mean, majority 90% of the global trade passes through the Rimland. So this has now become an important part of it. Now, if you look at India in this context, India is located in Asia. It connects two important seas. One is the Indian Ocean, And from Indian Ocean, it also transits to the South China Sea and to the Pacific. And India is also an important continental player because India is just is a neighbor of China, is a neighbor of Pakistan, and it's also a neighbor in a sense, particularly through Myanmar with Southeast Asia. So if you look at the emerging world order, the 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 relativity of the order is defined by the contest between the east and the west, which is west is America and Western allies, and the east is what we call the Russians and allies. And India is a player who is a non-aligned player, who is not a player who is taking any particular sides in this context, and it what we call an autonomous power. And this autonomous power of India is central, given its size, given its geopolitical location, is central to the emerging world order. Now, this is the, and you look at it, India, this is an important perspective that we have to keep in mind. Now, you ask me a question about what is the Indian narrative. See, India has made decisive transition nearly 2 decades ago when it has created an intellectual conditions for both Indians and abroad to recognize India as a key player in the global system and the emerging power balance. And this was not because of India. India was India was an inward-looking society till then, but post 1991, India got better aligned with the global system. 1998, we did a nuclear test, and from there onwards, we launched a major reform process. And as part of the major reform process, India's today GDP is $3.5 trillion. So, in terms of geopolitical narrative, which is defined by location, GDP, and intrinsic military power, India is a relatively, it's not a major player, it's what we call a middle power, which has got strong military capability, a dynamic economy, world's largest population, and a hugely young population, which puts it in a situation that it's one country whose story as a global player and a major power is in the process of being written. We are still far away, 10 to 15 years away, but we are an important global player. So added to that is the fact is that India is a democratic country. We have a stable economic growth. We have 3.5% of the global trade, and we are incrementally asserting our power and influence in pursuit of not only India's own interests, but also, like you see in G20, India is picking up the leadership of the global South, the countries of Africa here, and the countries in West Asia, and even the countries in Central in Latin America. Now, it is becoming a spokesman for them. When India says war, the war in Ukraine is okay, is a European centric war, but it is having a great consequence for the global South. What it means is impacting its economy. People are not getting wheat to eat. The critical energy resources are not being made available. Because of the sanctions, critical items of import are not being imported, and therefore the sufferer in this whole context is the global south. So the India is becoming a voice of the global south. So this is an important aspect that we need to take cognizance of. Next issue as far as India is concerned is India's power alignments. Now look at India. It's a member of Shanghai Cooperation Organization, is which is very, very Sino-centric, Russian-oriented organization with Central Asia as the core. Then we have the quadrilateral. The quadrilateral comprises of, as everybody knows, is United States, Australia, Japan, and India. It is a Western-oriented organization where we are an accepted player, accepted partner. Then we have in the we are a member of the ASEAN security framework. We are partners with America, UAE, and Israel in West Asia. So, bottom line is that we straddle almost all important alignments, structures which are central to maintaining what we call a rule-based order, trade, development, and issues like that. So from that perspective, India's voice is particularly heard when where India talks about saying, "Hey, we you cannot unilaterality of sanction is not acceptable." Why does India say unilaterality of sanctions is not acceptable? Globally, all sanctions have to be, essentially speaking, a sanction has to be by and large approved by the United Nations. United Nations is the only body globally with the approval of the Security Council that can impose sanctions. What United States and Europe have done in terms of sanctions on Russia is an absolutely unilateral assertion. So therefore, when India says that you cannot lecture us on unilateralism of your own by imposing sanctions which are not overwritten by any global institutions, or they do not have the sanctity, global sanctity. This is a pure what they call is dadagiri, because of your control of the Westphalian of global institutions as part of the Westphalian system and as part of the what happened post the Second World War. So this is what the story is. If you have any questions so far, I'll take them on.
Actually, yes, the India has come out with this thing called Sagar, security and development for all in the
Yeah,
region, and security and growth for all in the region. That's an interesting thing when you're talking about a country that is wanting to take a different narrative than, let's say the let's take the two predominant narratives. One is the US driven narrative, which is I'll give you this and that and the other, but you bloody well listen to me. And the Chinese narrative, which is I'll give you the loans. I don't care if your brother in law gets rich, but you need to fall in line with me.
yeah.
So, how does India come in the middle and come out with a thing saying that, listen, let's all grow and develop, let's all be, as they say, Vasudeva Kutumbakam, and one family, and we are all in the same boat, sort of a thing. And we've actually acted on these kind of things, not just words. How
Okay.
does this
So,
fall into balance, sir?
okay. Sagar is actually sanctifies India's maritime strategy. But I'll give you a correlation with Sagar between what is happening in South China Sea or the Chinese concept of nine dash lines. Now, China comes up one fine day and says, historically, A, B, C, D, E atolls are mine. This is the line I had. This is my historic maps. I used to own this land. So I will control these areas. Result result that the Chinese have started building up bases. They have started developing these atolls. They have started new maritime laws of movement in South China Sea, and therefore they are trying to evolve a code of conduct, which is a very Sino-centric code of conduct, undermining the sovereignty claims of large number of ASEAN players. Look at it from the other side in India. India, through Sagar strategy, is trying to be an inclusive player in the IOR littoral to bring all players onto the same boat. I mean, we want to have good relationship with them. We want to invest in development of Maldives, Mauritius, Sri Lanka. you name it. Degogracia, we have gone as far as to go to Mozambique to invest in these countries, and we have also further gone out to Africa, where we want to have human based relationships where India's resources and investments are human centric and not power centric. The difference between human centric and power centric of the Chinese BRI is that the human centric investments generally by and large are related to human development indices. You do well for the country, you do well, you create skills, you create jobs, you are invested in improvement, the social indices, improvement of social indices on those states. Look at what we did in Afghanistan. The Seva saying, we invested in universities, we opened agricultural colleges, we built up the parliament building, and we have done that all over the places. Now, similarly, we are helping Maldives with military stores. We are helping them with the radars for their thing. We do the weather radar, tsunami warnings, etc., etc. Integrated them as a part of a large framework where they can get all the warnings that they can, so that people's lives can be saved. So the bottom line basically is this thing is, one is growth and inclusive strategy, one is a dominant strategy. Now, this is what is endearing India in the minds of these people. I mean, who went and gave $3.5 billion of loan and investments in Sri Lanka when the chips were down? Even today, when Chinese are exporting 2,000 monkeys from Sri Lanka, that is in payment for what they have invested in BRI. So it's a very funny kind of a scenario. So uh, similar situation is now happening. Now we went from look east to act east policy. Now, why did we move into look east? Look east was basically political engagement, little bit of economic engagement. No, the act east policy is underlines the fact that we want to tell the ASEAN and our Southeast Asian friends and partners that we have a common future. We need to secure the sea lines of communications. We need to secure the region from all kinds of challenges, uh, and we need to do it together and build up the future of the region together. And India, as its economy grows, as it becomes a strong economy, we will come and invest more and more into your countries. So, with the result is, India is seen as a benign power, but with building up of our capabilities and capacities, both in terms of our military assets, nuclear assets, our technological assets, our digital prowess, uh, we are now being seen as an alternative, incrementally seen as an alternative to what the Chinese and other players can do. So there's a large number of connectivity initiatives that we have taken in the region, essentially speaking, like the trilateral highway between India, Myanmar, and Thailand, building up roads and sources, connectivity, ports, harbors, places. Look at Chabahar, what we are trying to do, and the new INSTC, Indian North-South Trade Corridor, which is now going to go via Armenia, incidentally, and from Armenia is going to go to Russia, as well as another route going to Europe. So the whole, what does it all that mean? All that this mean is, here is a nation which has got strong, it is called capabilities, capacities, etc., etc. But it is trying to not use muscle power, but it is trying to use its intrinsic good-heartedness, social power, its capacities and capabilities for helping other countries to grow, resolving their problems, and sorting out their differences, sorting out their internal issues, providing their capacities for their intrinsic growth. That's what it's doing, and not dealing like the BRA does, we give you an infrastructure loan of $2 billion. I'll give you a development loan of $1 billion. This is what will happen. You will build three power plants. All power plants will be built up by Chinese company. All the money will go back to the Chinese company. The same thing actually, unfortunately, the Americans did. All contractors. The irony is that if America spent $1 million in Afghanistan, 80% of that money went back to United States through contractors. So the contractors who did this thing were basically Americans that were paid with the dollars money, etc. So this is the difference between us. Uh, Yet there is a big issue. The big issue is because at one level we have got legacy problems on our borders with the China, and to lesser extent, I mean, also with Pakistan. So we have a disputed borders, which puts us on the back foot in terms of ensuring that we have a certain amount of credible investments in defense and continue to increase the investments in defense. The other side of the picture is that even when we have good relationships with United States, etc., the payoffs from that partnerships are limited purely because of the different areas of interest between us and the Western Alliance system in Asia, that is United States, Japan, Australia, etc., which, like I explained last time, is a very East Asia in the Western Pacific center. So, which leaves India essentially as a standalone power to deal with the consequences of what I call our security challenges, and which your audience knows are fair amount. We have border for nearly 4 years into a border tiff with China. Chinese have intruded into our territory, and we are trying to sort out those issues. We have a continued ideological problem and cross-border terrorism from Pakistan. We also have our other neighbors who otherwise depend on us, but knowing that India is a benign power, flex their muscles rather frequently at us. So this is the kind of scenario we have to. So India is trying to deal with all these issues, and san- India's actions, which are not dominating but supportive, are one of the great reasons as the to particularly the global south, the East Asia, and the West Asia countries have now come to recognize that India is an important player. And on lastly and most importantly is that as its economy grows, India is becoming a central to manufacturing destination and a hub for manufacturing and global supply chains from where the world can draw resources and items like China became the factory of the world. India, if it continues, we already have a $770 billion trade this year. If we can jump to about through 1 trillion or $1.5 trillion trade, you will see the global perspective changes. And the why world has confidence in India is because India is not an expansionist power. And that's the word we must remember. India is not an expansionist power.
We don't have any territorial claims. I mean, we don't want anybody else's country. We have our own territorial claims, which are our lands, and that's something which is very interesting. Sir, you mentioned in your answer, your predominant factor that you spoke about was the economy, and so that derivation that economy plays a great part in terms of a country's geopolitical heft in the world. And the example is right next door to us in Pakistan. Somebody who used to have great geopolitical heft till the time it was surviving. Now that it is under uh, ventilator, then it's difficult for the Pakistanis to kind of use that heft. I'd like to ask you an economic question itself. with regards vis-a-vis the influence. Now, India is not that large an economy. That's something which is not, I'm not wanting to hide away from that factor. The amount of effort that India could actually put in, when you compare that in terms of the checkbook diplomacy of the Chinese, uh, what is the kind of narrative that India needs to put forward, or is to kind of weed away people from the Chinese checkbook, or does it needs to be a natural corrective, wherein examples like Sri Lanka come out more often, and then it kind of bends the story towards our end.
Okay, so let's look at it. Let me give you an example of India UAE relations.
Hmm.
Okay, in UAE is investing close to about $100 billion into India. Our trade is what is UAE? Small little country, lot of money to invest. Why is it investing in India? Why suddenly the Saudi Arabians are investing in India? It's not the issue of checkbook diplomacy. It is the question of capacity and the capability. We were earlier very shy of dealing with these countries. We were not allowing ourselves to reach out to these countries. But today, we are reaching out to them. We are going and investing. Give you a small example. Most interestingly, we are building the largest refinery in Asia. And you know which place? Mongolia. And it's an Indian built refinery. Now you say, why is India built refinery going to do over there? Please try and understand one small point. Refinery produces lubes and all kinds of other items.
Yes.
Okay. Now, if you have a Mongolia producing such thing, who's going to buy them? The Chinks are going to buy it. The other guys are going to buy it in the region. The Koreans will buy it. The Russians will buy it. So once you have that kind of resource, what people are not aware of the fact that the entire Southeast Asia is dependent on not energy resources, not oil and gas, but finished energy products from India. All kinds of oil and lubricants which are being used in Southeast Asia are being coming from India. So it is true we are nowhere near China. It is also true that, but it is not the quantity which matters. It is the approach that matters. What is happening to CPEC? There was a big debate, understanding everybody knows what's happening to CPC. $45 billion of money investment has been made by the Chinese. They built some roads, they built power houses, a huge amount of electricity. But what is the cost of production? The Pakistani China generated Pakistani electricity is 29 rupees per wattage as compared to 6.5 or 7 rupees in our country. Today, there is a back channel discussion going on that India should provide minimum or something close to about 1,500 or 1,500 megawatts per day to China, to Pakistan at a particular cost. Of course, India is not agreeing to it, but India is not going to do it in a hurry. But the question is, what usage of that? The whole issue is what usage is of that investment, which is not cost productive. Similarly, I tell you another line: a railway line system is being developed in Bangladesh. Bangladesh called for tenders. The Chinese came up and we came up. The Chinese were number one. They lined up everybody's pockets and became number one. Once the feasibility report was done, there was a 40% difference in cost between them and us. So, see, our problem basically was, and to some extent continues to be, is we are very good at project development, but we are not that good at project management. Our implementations are sometimes sketchy. But one of the things that has been done by this government and the collectiveness by everybody in this country, the political class, the industrial class, the bureaucracy, everybody, you want to compliment them, that we have become a better manager. Our costs are coming down. And once our costs are coming down, we are going to be a much better option than half the other guys in town. Why? Why is it that Japanese who have got so much of money and they are putting an investment? And there's another story. The story is of a joint India Japan project in Colombo port,
Hmm.
where we went in together, but the Japanese were so high. The Japanese costs are so high primarily because Japanese are good at implementing, but they don't understand that what is the infrastructure good enough for Tokyo and where the cost can be high. You cannot have the same cost in the Colombo. Yeah? So what I am trying to explain to you is, yes, we are not a that big an economy. We do not have that deep pockets, but what we are doing is we are becoming a discernible player who is who can invest, undertake projects, deliver those projects incrementally more on time and at lower costs and without any political strings attached. And that's important. We are not lining up, this country is not lining up pockets of Sheikh Hasina to get a contract in Bangladesh. Another interesting point is the Adani's power to Adani's power. Incidentally, Bangladesh is getting power from Adani's Ranchi powerhouses. So now see the difference. It's going from, and we have created these connectivity grids. There is an attitudinal shift taking place even within our neighborhood on India's approach. It's slow. Sometimes it's been overridden by the pressure they come under from our good neighbors in the north, and sometimes they come under pressure from our equally good neighbor in the west. But as you have rightly pointed out, that our good neighbor in the west is bankrupt politically, militarily, and economically. So his ability to shape things is getting influence is getting low, but the one in the north is strong. So he will exercise power and influence because he for him Indian Ocean is a strategic area of concern, like I explained last time. So he will push in here and he will try to influence. But the point at issue is the larger point is that India is being seen as a benign, up and coming power, and I like to use the phrase once again, which is not expansionist, which is a democratic country adhering to the rule-based order and also an open and a free society where anybody else who feels aggrieved can get justice and has the recourse to law. Unlike in China, you don't have any recourse to law, so you can be just put in the jail. So this is what makes India let's put it this way, an endearing power in the global system.
So, you mentioned China, and the failures of China would give us an opportunity to look at where we could put in an imprint. For example, the recent outreach into Africa tells us a lot. How do you portray that? That is the second last question, and the last one, both connected. Is that with India would want to kind of put in its own region first, look at its own region first, and try and streamline whatever it needs to in that place. And the first step would be the neighborhood, sir. Uh,
Okay. Oh,
how would
okay.
you kind of?
Okay. See, we came up with a policy called Africa Growth Corridor. Uh, Basically, Africa Growth Corridor was that outreach to Africa is very important. Outreach to Africa is
Hmm.
important for two, three uh, things, and which are not given the credit. I mean, they are not talked about openly. Fundamentally, the overall growth rate of Africa is about 3.2% to 3.3%. Uh, African economies are on the upswing. It is not realized easily. Number two, An upswing African economy creates a huge market in the future. So they are emerging markets in the future. Two, they continue to hold resources. Okay, everybody knows that almost all the important resources in the world are available in Africa. India is trying to reach out both in terms of economic investments, political linkages, and also encouraging our industries to set up shop in Africa. And this is important from our perspective. Like I was trying to explain to you, they are the future markets, they are the future resource base, and and if as a champion of global South, it's important for us to also ensure that the region is supplied with basic essential commodities, i.e., wheat, fertilizers, oil, and other resources. So we are entering into contracts. We try to help out with our friends and partners to give them that kind of resource base. So it's an engagement between friends, an engagement between people who feel for each other, but it is not a geopolitical engagement for ascendancy of a power ascendancy in a particular region. For us, Africa is a place where we would like to invest and be friends, and not as a power equations between the power blocks, which is happening in case of China, Russia on one side, and United States on the other, U.S. Africa Command and other investments. So this is the aspect over there. Your next question was on the neighborhood. We have, as everybody aware, is a troublesome neighborhood. The interesting part of our neighbors is that when they feel confident and they want to leverage against us, they go and use the China card. So basically, what we are trying to say is that don't play politics with us. We are willing partners. We can revive SARC. An interesting factor on SARC, which most people are not aware of it, and in one of our back channel discussions is that we discussed about revitalizing SARC. How? We said everybody in the world is using webinars. We can do you can do a digital SARC. We can have a SARC meeting digitally. You don't have to move from one place to the other. Idea is to resolve issues, work on agendas, and come up with solutions. So countries are realizing that India can be uh, an important option, a choice, and India is their neighbor. And as you are well aware, that all SAARC countries have no no borders with each other. The only border they have is with us. So they have to have a good relationship with India. And like I keep saying, is benign power. We do not want to harm twist anybody. But the question of this is, these countries. Sometimes they attempt to use balancing leverages vis-a-vis us and the Chinese. They believe that can get them better results. That's something which doesn't work very well. So that's the point we try to make to our neighbors. Come on, discuss openly. We are willing to listen. We want to be partner to it. Where we make mistakes, point us where we are making mistakes. But let's do it in a spirit of friendship, cooperation, and trust.
Wise words, if I may say that, because at the end of it, I guess it is only natural that if two cats are fighting, a monkey in the middle will have a little fun, and that's what, with no disrespect to our neighbors, that's something that I guess they keep doing by pitching India against China. I must say, sir, this is an insightful conversation where you've taught us how the world is kind of reshaping and what has India done and needs to do in the future to kind of uh, make its presence felt, if I may, sir, around the world. And as you very clearly said, that India is a very subtle and a quiet power. We don't demand anything from anybody. We are here for your and my both benefit. It has to be a true win-win situation, and I guess that's going to be the the plus point of the India narrative. So I'd like to discuss this obviously a little further with you with a little more specificity into military and probably a diplomatic heft, and we'll probably look at that in the next discussion, sir. But till then, sir, thank you so much for taking out the time and the effort. I'm sure with the study that you've done to help us understand where does India stand in today's world. Till next time, sir. Thank you and Jai Hind.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed our conversation. Thank you very much.